In 2006, police responded to a 911 call from what sounded like a distraught husband and father, Jon Worrell. He'd just gone to the family business and had found his wife dead from a gunshot wound. Doris Worrell was 39 years old when she was found September 20th, 2006 by her husband, Jon, at their business, John's Sports Park and Arcade. The business had batting cages and a golf cart track, mini golf course. Working in another part of the park that day was an 18-year-old young woman by the name of Paola Yarberry. And Paola did not just work at the park. She also lived with Jon and Doris Worrell, owners of the park. By all accounts, Jon seemed devastated. In fact, witnesses who arrived at the business after he called 911 said that he just crumpled to the floor, mourning his wife, Doris. At first glance, it seemed like maybe this was a botched robbery attempt, or maybe someone had gotten banned from the park and came back and out of revenge shot and killed Doris Worrell. Well, eventually, police would arrest two young men for the murder of Doris Worrell, but just a few weeks after the arrest, they had to drop the charges for lack of evidence. Investigators also were learning that there were problems in the Worrell marriage. You see, young Paola Yarberry, that 18-year-old employee who also lived with them, she began living with Jon and Doris Worrell when she was just 15 years old. She was from Venezuela. She had nowhere to go. And Leanne Tuggle, Doris's sister, said that Doris was a good person. In fact, too good of a person. She said that she met Paola. She was 15 years old. She was homeless, and that Doris told her she could sleep on the couch. And Leanne Tuggle said, well, the nights on the couch got longer and longer and longer. And by the time Paola is 18, she is also the nanny to Jon and Doris Worrell's three children. Jon Worrell became a suspect fairly quickly because, see, just a few months after the murder, Miss Yarberry, Paola, was picked up by customs enforcement. You see, she didn't have the proper paperwork to be in the United States illegally. And while she was awaiting deportation, a district attorney in Georgia called customs enforcement and said, I believe that this young lady you're holding is withholding information about a murder in Douglas, Georgia, and Jon Worrell is a suspect. 2007, Jon Worrell, he packed up the three children, all under the age of 12, and he moved. He moved to Florida, and he stayed in Florida for approximately a year, and then in 2008, he moved to Costa Rica. Well, I'm sure you all have guessed that when investigators discovered problems in the Worrell marriage, that those problems surrounded the 18-year-old nanny, Paola Yarberry. And after Jon Worrell moved to Costa Rica with the children in 2008, guess who joined him in Costa Rica? Paola Yarberry and Jon Worrell eventually went on to raise Jon and Doris's three children together outside of the United States. Douglas, Georgia is a small community, and law enforcement did not ever forget about the murder of Doris Worrell, and they flew to Costa Rica after hearing that Jon and Paola had broken up and that Jon Worrell had moved back to the United States and bought a house in Missouri. Well, Paola Yarberry decided to, quote, cooperate with investigators from Georgia once they had arrived in Costa Rica. Investigators have not divulged what Paola Yarberry told them, except to say that Jon was afraid that Doris Worrell was going to divorce him and that he would lose access to his three children. My guess is more than the children, Jon Worrell really worried about how a divorce would hit his pockets and what his reputation would be like when people found out that he was sleeping with the 18-year-old nanny who they took in when she was homeless and just 15 years young. In my opinion, with Doris dead and gone, Jon not only got to save a lot of money, he got to save his reputation, and he got to raise he and Doris's children with his teenage girlfriend, the nanny, Paola Yarberry. Well, whatever the substance of that cooperation was, led to Jon Worrell's arrest in Missouri. He's been charged with malice murder, felony murder, and conspiracy to commit murder and aggravated battery. Jon Worrell, according to the lead investigator, was not present when his wife was murdered, but that he, quote, instigated a conspiracy to commit this murder. Investigators say that Paola Yarberry is not a suspect. And, many could argue that she was 15 and homeless, living in a foreign country when she went to live with the Worrells, and that Jon Worrell took advantage of her, blah, blah, blah. She stayed with Jon Worrell for 20 years to raise his victim's children. His victim, his wife, Doris, who took in a young immigrant girl from Venezuela at 15 who had nowhere to go. This is the least that Paola Yarberry could do. If you're still with me, thanks for listening. Do me a favor, hit the like button, drop me a comment. I'd like to know what you think.